Hello guys, good evening, good evening, good evening everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Okay, is everybody in the house? Hi, hello everybody. Hello team. Okay guys, good evening. It's 8th of July, okay? And we are into the final day, the last day of week 1. As part of this, we were focusing much about the career related aspects. And guys, today's session is going to be really amazing one. Okay. So it's going to be a wonderful session. We are going to discuss a lot of topics today. Okay. A end-to-end journey we will be picking up, starting from right from the beginning point till the time the piece goes to production. Okay. So I think today's session is going to be so useful in multiple aspects which you will be requiring it all throughout your career maybe. Okay. So right from the beginning point till the ending point we will be covering of the details. Okay. And yes, I know there might be a lot of information. If you are freshers or beginners in the industry, 0 to 2 years of experience, there will be some new terms, new terminologies, tools and processes which we will be discussing today. And even if you guys are working already, I think it would be a nice brush up to see if there is any area of improvement in any of the way which you guys are performing. Okay. So basically, right from the collection of requirements till the time we go to production and even further support related activity, we are going to continue this end-to-end journey today. Okay. Who will be the people involved, what they will be doing, generally how much time, what happens, we are going to complete that entire way of working package today. Okay. Fine. So let's get started. Okay. It's a lot of things. The session is going to be recorded, so I would highly recommend you to bookmark this link and go through it again once more, make some notes while running, and बाद में recording लेके you can just go through it again. Okay. Fine. Few key things to remember. As part of this entire my 12 years of IT experience journey, plus speaking to multiple of my friends who are working in top companies in different positions. So collecting all of that, we have understood one very decent way by which entire software development process works. Okay. So I'm going to share you the average observations, the common processes which is majorly followed across different companies. Yes, there will be some projects, some companies, some variations might be there, some tools might change. So always consider that some variations will always be possible. Okay. So what today we are going to discuss is the common understanding of end-to-end life cycle of how a project is developed, what kind of tools, what kind of people, and what kind of things will be interacting. Okay. So chalo, let's get started, everybody. Okay. Maza aega. 8 seconds. There are some of the guys, they are looking for the link. I guess we already pasted them the link. Okay. Fine. Okay. Chalo, let's get started. एक second. Okay. ठीक है. So guys, देखो, one important aspect. Okay, we will be discussing about Agile as a way of project development. Okay. So chalo, let's few things let's understand. Okay, be with me, follow my words, be along with the flow end to end. देखो, Agile process says don't develop the entire project in one go. Okay, generally in the previous days, when a client used to come for the project, it used to be discussed a lot of durations to and fro, brainstorming, and then a timeline used to be given. Okay, in 1 year we will be developing the project and giving back to you. Okay, putting it very simple, Agile says, hey, no, we don't want to wait for 1 year. You do it in a different manner, which is good for business, which is good for quality and a lot of other things. So what Agile is doing is It takes this entire 1 year frame, it breaks it down into smaller pieces, and something like maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks kind of. Okay. So agile process takes a project, then the team develops it for 2 or 3 weeks of time, 4 weeks of time. Standard agile working cycle is 2 weeks. Some projects might have even 1 week cycle, 4 week cycle also. But a team takes a portion of the work, works on that for certain time, and as soon as it is done, the demo is given to the client and the assets will be deployed to production. Nothing but earlier days, 1 year people has to wait for getting the piece to production. Right now, they just have to wait for like as low as 2 to 3 weeks of time, and they will be keeping on getting the product to production environment, which they can use directly for their business. So it is very high, like very good things about it, right? So instead of 1 year, 2 weeks mein mil raha hai, it's very nice. And then incrementally, every 2 weeks, new features will be developed and they will be kept on deploying. So by that way, a incremental model of software development is what is coming with Agile. Okay? So understood, right? Instead of one time full developing and deploying, it is broken into smaller pieces. Incremental development deployment is happening. Now, what does that mean? That means one feature needs to be taken. The entire project might have 100 features. With Agile, they say take one of the feature or few of the features. Let's say per cycle of that 2 weeks, let's say take 3 features or 4 features or 5 features. It completely depends on how much is the team size. But they will define, okay, let's take 4 features, complete that 4 features in this 2 weeks, demo it, take it to production. Now you need to understand, this feature development goes through a lot of phases. Okay. Step number 1 here happens. The requirements are first collected from the customer. The requirement is understood. Then the questions and clarifications will be there. Brainstorming will happen. If there are gaps in requirement, again, I'm going to go through it. Right now, I'm giving you just a high level glance. Okay. Be with me. Don't lose me in between. Okay. So requirement is received. It is brainstormed. Nothing but what the product is giving, the technical team understands it. I'll even get into more details later. Ek ek karke karte, layer wise. Okay. So the technical team comes, they understands the requirement. If they have questions, clarifications, they ask all those questions. If this person is aware of it, then he gives the requirements or he checks again back with the business, comes back with clarifications. So eventually to and fro happens. Then the requirement of this feature is finalized. Once the requirement is finalized, then the technical team gets into action. And the primary expectation is now think about design, analysis, and impact on the system. Nothing but how the classes should be written, how the database design should be, performance-wise, what things should be considered, security-wise, what things should be considered. Is the code modular? Right? Can we reuse existing pieces of the code? Okay, all of these concepts. Plus, if you're deploying it in AWS architecture, so can we use some of the AWS services for getting the work done? Nothing but comparing whatever this functionality expects. So brainstorming will happen. Okay, how to build this functionality? Okay, who does it will again get it. But understand phases: gather the requirements, clarify and freeze the requirements, then design and analyze the requirements. Once it is done, then these requirements will be assigned to the team members. Okay, for this feature, UI development will happen by this person, server development will happen by this person, QA development will happen by this person. That work allocation is going to happen. Okay. Now, once the work is allocated, the team starts with the development. While they are developing, there will be code review, which will happen in parallel. Projects will have unit testing also to be written. We will again discuss all those things in details. So coding will happen, dev testing will happen, unit testing will happen, and they will be code reviewed. Once everything looks good, UI and the server team members, they collaborate their code with one another. Okay, the UI person has developed a UI screen. Server person has developed his own APIs. So they will then deploy their code into a dev environment. Okay, so nothing but just understand multiple things are going on. So requirements are understood. Then coding is done. Review is done. Okay, and now for dev testing, UI and the server members deploy their code in some common dev environment. Okay, so this environment could be in AWS or Google or Azure, or it can be any environment, infrastructure basically. Some nodes will be there where the server code will be deployed. The UI guys will connect to this server, they will do the proper integration, and then the dev testing will continue. Now, once the dev testing has happened properly, then this code will be given to the next phase for the QA to work. Then the QA starts with the testing. Once, if they find any bugs, they raise it back to the developer. Okay, bhai, we are getting bugs, please fix it. The developer understands the bug. At times, the bugs might be invalid, or at times it might be valid. If it is invalid, developer says, no, it's as per expectation, please check it. It's not a valid bug. If it is invalid, developer understands it in the dev environment and then fixes it and gives it back again for QA testing. Now for QA testing, we give it in the QA environment. Okay, just be with the flow. Don't try to take too much into just understand the flow. So first dev testing happened in the dev environment. Now coding was done. Now the code is moved to the QA environment, given to the QA team. QA is nothing but the testers, quality analysts. So they do the testing. If the bugs are there, give it back. Bug fixes will be coming. They test it. And once they have tested, they say, okay, the quality is all good. We are giving a sign off. Now give this project to the next phase where the UAT testing is going to happen. Okay. Again, different companies will have different rules for UAT testing, user acceptance testing. Some companies, the client guys itself will be doing the testing. And then once they approve it, if there are bugs in that phase, again, it comes back to the QA. How did these bugs come? QA raises it back to the developer fix it, gives it back to the QA, gives it back to the UAT phase. And once it is done, then it is lined up for going to production. And then there will be a date by which this code, which is written along with the DB scripts, everything will be executed in the prod environment and then launched to the live customer. Okay. So this is what is an end-to-end cycle which needs to happen in every 2 weeks process. If you are working in an agile, this everything happens in every 2 weeks of cycle. Okay. So understood? एक deep breath लेते, relax down करते. Okay, just calm down. Checkpoints. Gather the requirement, clarify the requirements, design the work, allocate the work to the team members, start the development. UI and the server starts the development. The QA starts writing the test cases. UI and the server members does the code review. And now they are doing the dev testing on the dev environment. Once they feel everything is good, they move the code to the QA and QA environment. Now from the QA environment, the QA team, the tester team is going to do the testing. Once the testing is over, then it goes forward for the UAT. Once the UAT is over, it goes forward for the production line. And then on the decided date and the downtime window, it will be shipped to the prod environment. Okay, so this is the end-to-end flow. Okay, so far clear, guys? Can you just write it in chat if you are in context about whatever we discussed so far? Just a basic process. Now isko ek ek karke we have to peel the onion. Okay, what happens, what kind of meetings, when this happens, when that happens, do's and the don'ts, lot of things we are going to do. Just mention it in the chat, everybody, if you are in complete context of what we are speaking about. Okay, okay, chalo guys, फटाक से. ठीक है? Now, a few things here. Okay, ठीक है, चलो, let's get going now. One by one, peeling the stuff. Okay. Now let's understand some rules first of all, which will be there in the agile environment. Okay. So the person who gives the requirements, that person is called as product owner. Okay. Let me parallelly share the screen at it's also, and let me even make some quick notes about it as well, so that there will be something for you guys to look at. Okay. So let me just go. I'm sharing my screen. Then let's go. Okay. Fine team. Chalo, let's get started. Okay. Now, first we need to understand the roles, the designations which will be involved. Okay. First, product owner. Okay. So this is the person who gives the requirements. Okay. Next. So the product owner generally comes from the client side. In many companies, this is the person which is directly close to the business. So the people who has requirement, these requirements, they come, and then the product owner speaks with them, collects the requirements. Generally the technical team is here, tech team is below here. Okay, so tech team will be working here. Business closest person will be product owner. Always product owner is going to be the mediator between business and the technical team. Okay. Next, in the technical team where we all will be part of, there will be two primary designations. One will be Scrum Master. In Agile, I'm all speaking about Agile. One will be Scrum Master. Another will be just called as a team member. Okay. Now we just refer them everybody as team member, but internally, yes, there will be UI members, there will be server members, there will be QA members. Okay. Generally, this is how it's common for every team. Okay. UI, server, QA. In this itself, there will be some experience. So there will be freshers, there will be mid-level, there will be more experience, like maybe tech lead level people will be there. Okay, then QA wise also junior, senior, both. So both kind of. So this is how is the team composition basically. Okay. Now just understand the requirements. The first step which we want to discuss is requirement gathering. Okay, first step is requirement gathering. Now, what happens is there will be some terminologies in the industry called as, maybe some people call it refinement session. Okay, or some people call it as grooming sessions or requirement gathering session, requirement clarification session. There are multiple terminologies here. Okay, now for each of the terminology basically just means the product owner, this guy is going to bring requirements and give it to the team. Okay, how is he going to do it? It's not like okay, leke aage haath se de raha hai, right? So there will be some tools in the industry which will be used for doing this requirement gathering and project tracking, stuff like that. So step number one, there will be the tool that will come, Jira. Okay, many of the companies are using Jira. Some other companies might use some other variations of it, but basically it's a work tracking, project tracking tool. That's a Jira. Okay. Now in the Jira, the product owner is going to write the requirements in Jira. Okay, just understand, Jira will be nothing but it's just a website or an application. You can just assume it will be accessible via browser. In that, the requirements will be written by the product owner, and these requirements are basically given in the form of user story. Okay, just know it, requirements are given in the form of user story. Okay, nothing but that's one way of writing requirement. Okay, just keeping it simple. Let's say if you're in a banking application, right? So for a banking application, whoever is the end customer, so a person who is trying to make a transaction, money transfer. So nothing but in Agile, what they are saying is Okay, but whenever you give the requirement, give it from the perspective of these end customers. Okay, so as an end customer, I want to transfer money from my account to some other account. So that's a standard which Agile world is following. That is where it is called as a user story. Okay, write the requirement from the perspective of the end user, nothing but who is going to use the application, whichever you guys are building up. Okay, and that actually helps in a lot of clarifications, what feature the person will be doing and all that. So that's one perspective, and that is where they have just named the requirement itself as user story, because it will be in a story form, like, okay, I want to do this in your system. Okay, as a net banking user, I want to transfer money from my account to another account instantly using IMPS feature. Okay, so something like that. So there will be a format. Let's not get into all the details. There is a lot about it. But yes, first user story will be written, that it will be given. So what will happen is, step number 1 in requirement gathering phase, the product owner will write the full requirement in Jira tool in user story, and then he will be connecting with the technical team in some meeting, maybe called as refinement meeting, okay, or grooming meeting, or requirement gathering meeting, whatever people might call it. Okay, so generally this is not yet eligible for development yet. It is only requirement gathering phase. Okay, so don't mix the two things, both are separate. Okay, now it is only requirement gathering. So here the product owner plus Scrum Master plus team, they all connect in this call together to discuss the requirement. Okay, so discussing, as in, the product owner will share his screen, he will explain the entire requirement. Okay, this will happen, this is required, that is required. Now regarding the requirements, if you are a UI developer, you need to ask for mocks. Where is the mocks available? Where is the design? What kind of validations required? So you need to ask questions, whatever you feel are not clear to you. So you should think from implementation perspective, design perspective, and challenges for technical implementation. These requirements will come from business perspective. Okay, we want this feature. But in reality, whenever you're trying to do technical implementation, some challenges might be there. Okay, now you have to raise those challenges to them. Okay, this is not possible to develop like this. Maybe you change the requirement. Sometimes if it is a complicated requirement, you can push them back. No, if we develop like this, the system will become very tough for maintenance. Please simplify this requirement. So these kind of to and fro will happen as part of this. Okay, so nothing but as outcome, expectation is clarification. So guys, again, I'm telling it to all, don't directly accept every requirement that comes from the customer. You need to evaluate it from the technical capability wise and discuss with them, ki bhai, this is not right, maybe it should happen like this. This is where system will be more impactful. So suggest them, improve the requirements, so that in long term future for technical development and maintenance, it becomes simple. So that is where it will happen. And finally, as an end result, to and fro it might happen. Sometimes they might say, okay, tomorrow let's connect again in another meeting, and then like multiple calls, maybe for sometimes 1 week entirely, these kind of to and fro calls will happen. Sometimes those requirements questions will be asked in the Jira user story itself as comments. Here itself people write comments. If there are too many questions across so many user stories, people might drop email, and then the email they will keep playing and get the clarification. So there are n number of ways of getting it, but eventually the requirements will be finalized. Okay, now the thing is, guys, in agile environment, okay, there are some specific terminologies which you need to understand with regards to how a dev life cycle will be. Okay, so first of all, the 2 week cycle we said, right, we will be developing for 2 weeks, that is called as sprint. The 2 week cycle which the dev is going to work upon is called as a sprint. Okay, now there will be some meetings in agile. So the first one is sprint planning meeting. Now what happens is, chalo, ek flow mein raho guys, don't take a gap in between, otherwise you'll be like, oh, project to chala gaya, I am still lying here. Okay, so chalo, let's understand a few things here. So what will happen is the requirements which are already finalized, these requirements will be taken as the input of sprint planning meeting. And here now further discussions will happen about design discussions, how to build it, what should be the approach. So the first thing is, okay, all team members should be clear about this requirement. So whoever is going to work on that requirement, they should be clear about the requirement. That will happen. Next, design discussions, design and approach finalization will happen. Okay, now as soon as this is done, the next thing which comes is estimation of ticket. So that feature, okay, user story is also called as a ticket. Some people might call it user story, some people might just call it as a task, some people might call it as a ticket. It all means about work. Okay, so estimating how much time it is going to take. So once you know the requirements, once you have even high level idea about how do you want to design it, then immediately you have to estimate it. Okay, so this requirement which is provided will take, let's say, 2 days of development, 2 days of development, and maybe 1.5 days of QA time for doing it. Okay, so nothing but it becomes total 3.5 days of dev. Okay, so yeah, this is how estimations will also happen here in the sprint planning meeting itself. And guys, as part of this meeting itself, the work will be allocated. Okay, who will be the UI? Now, some companies might do it differently. There is a sprint way of working. There is a Kanban way of working. So here they might just estimate and just load it in Jira board. And while the sprint is happening, people randomly come. They say, oh, this ticket is already up here. So nobody's picking it. So let me pick it up and develop it. But that's a very ad hoc way of working. There is a lot of confusion. The team has to be really matured in order to work like that. But for many of the other projects, which I have worked upon, which many of my friends have worked upon, they work in this model. During the sprint planning meeting itself, they assign tasks, assign developers to the task. Okay, nothing but here generally assignment of developers who should be working on this ticket. This decision will be done by Scrum Master plus senior guys of the team. So let's say there is a tech lead available with you. So these two guys are going to do the decision who will be the UI, who will be the server, and who will be the QA. Because there could be more than one person in your team. So you have to see whose bandwidth is available, who can work on this, considering estimates and multiple. I'm just taking one example of one feature. Just multiply it with 10 features. थोड़ा complex हो जाएगा फिर, right? When you multiply it with 10 features, it's like you have to then plan, oh, 10 features, that means one QA can do these 4 features, another can do these 6 features. UI, what he will do. So nothing but some detailed amount of planning will happen. But as an outcome of this, everybody in the team will get some work allocated, and every developer. So the expectation is every dev or QA knows what they would be working upon in upcoming sprint. Okay, every dev or the QA knows what they are going to work upon in the upcoming sprint. Very important. This is where clarity happens. Abhi tak we have not even started with the development. This is all happening. Sprint planning meeting, generally this happens on the day 1, first day of the sprint. Sprint planning meeting happens. So the basic checkpoint is requirements are clear. Next, work is assigned. Who will be working what for the next 2 weeks. Guys, if this is not happening in your project, I would sincerely request you guys to work with your managers and get this kind of system in place. This grooming meeting, okay, where requirements were being discussed, this refinement meeting, grooming meeting, that happens apart before itself. Maybe that grooming requirements might continue for 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks. But once all of that drama is done, then when it comes for picking up, that happens as part of this. Okay? So just understand. So try to get this organized, because these are basic things. If these are not done properly, project starts failing, guys. Let me tell you. These are very critical things, has to be done right. Otherwise, projects will suffer. Okay? Now, fine. Now, once the work is assigned, chalo, from there onwards, the actual development will continue. So far, we were only there. The tools which we were using was Jira. So in Jira itself, there will be all the people, all the team members will have some account in Jira. So in Jira itself, there will be this user story. We will create some subtask for it and say, okay, so if you go to Jira, there you will be able to find, okay, for this Jira, this is the UI person, this is the server person, this is the QA person. So somehow all of that tracking will happen in Jira. And maximum so far, we have even used some tools maybe for dropping emails, which is Outlook or something like that. Abhi tak only this work has been happening. Okay, fine. Now moving on to the development aspects. Okay, Abhi, thoda sa let's be clear on a few important things here. Okay, dekho. Two kind of activities. Once the requirement is clear and when the team is getting started with development, there will be two parallel activities. One will be what will the developers do and what will be the testers or the QA do. So what will these guys do? What will these guys do? It will happen from both the perspective. Now, developer, this means UI developer plus server developer. Okay. And then comes the tester. So pehla, let's speak about the developers, what these guys are going to do. Okay. There you go. Firstly, once they both know the requirement, they will be checking on whatever was the design and approach which was finalized during the initial discussions itself. Okay. So these discussions will be there. Maybe in Jira itself, they will put some Word document or write some comments. So from there, they will know at a high level how they want it to be developed also. That is already clarified. It was already happening before the sprint. Okay, so it will not be a very heavy discussion ki abhi aise design karenge. Okay, generally this kind of high level already happens. Granular details, low level designing will be done by these people itself. Okay, and that doesn't change much of the initial plan. So that is basic thing. Okay, now the developer, the first step what they have to do is define API contracts. So generally, every feature, majority of the feature that will take is going to be having UI work and server work. Sometimes it could be only server, so only server kind of work where they will write some APIs itself. API is nothing but endpoints. Let's use another terminology, endpoints. Nothing but the method of the server code. If you're writing Spring Boot, so over the web application, google.com/user/account/balance. So that kind of endpoint which is created, okay, that endpoint will have a request structure and a response structure. That entire thing is nothing but called as API. So first, the API contract will be finalized. Okay, because without that, what will they code? That is thing which binds UI and server. Just imagine you have to develop a form page which is having 2-3 fields, and now they have to capture some data, give it to the server. So they give it in the form of these APIs only. So first they need to agree upon what should be the contract between the UI and server. So contract finalizing means, okay, API endpoint would be finalized. Okay, for example, let's say your company name is Mr. X, let's say x.com is your company. Okay, x.com. Okay, now x.com/user/account/balance. Okay, so this is one of a endpoint. Okay, www. Okay, this will be one of a endpoint, and this endpoint will have a request structure. It will have a response structure. So request structure might be something like JSON, which might have like username and some other DOB balance. Okay, so balance basically maybe user ID it might have. Okay, and response might have something like, let's say, amount and currency. Okay, so nothing but these things have to be finalized between the UI and the server people before even you guys start with the development. Very important. Otherwise, what will you do, right? So this is a common thing. So first decide it. Okay, what should be the full pattern of this? Second, what should be the request body? What should be the response body? Okay. Next, make sure that you are already considering the in Spring Boot already the basic security checks are already there. Okay. So authentication, authorization, make sure that all of those things are properly happening. Okay. So it will have built-in, but just make sure that your API is configured in that manner okay, where the security check like OAuth token or something like that will already be triggered when your code is being executed. So validate those pieces. Fine. So step number one, the API contract will be finalized. Once it is finalized, yes, both the parties continue with their independent development. UI guy, it starts independently, server member starts independently. Now, UI will have its own way of coding, generally maybe something like Visual Studio Code. Okay, that is one of a very popular one, or people also use Sublime Editor. These kind of tools will be used by the UI, okay, editors. And on the server side, one very popular is Eclipse. Okay, then STS could be there, okay, or something else. It completely depends upon choices and yeah, whatever your team is using, so you guys can check it out. So in these two things, they start with the coding. Okay, now once the coding is happening, now you need to parallelly understand, okay, this all code will be committed in some central repository. Nothing but your code will not be lying in your local machines. You have to put your code somewhere. Okay, right now, many projects, everything is on cloud itself. So something like a Bitbucket, okay, Git repository, or there could be maybe something else itself. Okay, so Bitbucket, Git, or some other like SVN was there, ClearCase was there. So there are a lot of repositories available in the market. Now, whatever is being used for your project, this coding which you are doing is going to be all applied in this. So you need to really understand as a beginner how to work with these things. So do the setup as a junior, or if you're claiming some experience, and if you don't know these things, these are basics. It's a day-to-day job activity. So you have to know it. It's very common, guys. Okay. So don't mess it up. Fine. Just do the setup, experiment it for yourself. Now, once you do it, the development is happening once you do it. Now, what we said during the initial flow, okay, let's say in your local also, you might have a server or Spring Boot, you can host it in your local Eclipse itself. Now, people, before server people will be developing these APIs, yes or no? So this is nothing but Spring Boot application where you will write some code. In that manner, you will write the processing logic as a server person. Okay, it could be in Java, it could be .NET, it could be PHP. Every programming language will open APIs, and this model we are talking about REST endpoints. There could be SOAP endpoints, REST endpoints. So many times, majority of the people are using SOAP and REST endpoints in the current times. Okay, RESTful web services. They are all called as the same thing. It's all here. Okay. Now, REST endpoints basically. So the server developers will be writing this. Now, as a server developer, before you even give this code for UI members to test, you need to already do the testing in your local machine itself. Okay, maybe you start your local Tomcat, post your code there, and then you have to use some tool called as Postman. Many people are using this Postman tool. Okay, it has free version is also very capable, no need of having a paid as well. Okay, so using Postman is nothing but used for API testing. It can also be used for API automation work. It's a tool basically used for that. So whatever you write in your local machine, you deploy this in your Eclipse, Eclipse based automatically Spring Boot containers or Tomcat, wherever. And these endpoints you need to call via your Postman to see whether the functionality is working right. So first the developer, you do your testing. Once the testing is done, then the developer says, hey, I am ready. Okay, UI member, are you ready with your code? So meanwhile, the UI guy is doing his UI development. So he also tests everything locally. Okay, so now since the server API was not ready, best practice is the UI member should mock the server endpoint. That is where initially API contract writing was very important phase. So if you write this, the UI guys can do their entire code without even server being ready. they will just mock these behaviors. Mock is nothing but if I call this endpoint, give me and give this user ID, give me a response like 500 USD as the amount. So that is nothing but mocking. Okay, you don't need a server even to test. So nothing but once the contract is finalized, both the UI and the server can work independently. There will not be any dependency. Okay, once the contract is finalized. Okay. Now, while finalizing the contract, important thing guys, यहाँ पे you have to consider both success responses and failure responses. Both are important aspect. Success responses and failure responses, and both needs to be handled at the UI side. Otherwise, application will crash with technical error 404, 505, whatever kind of problems will be coming. Okay, 500 error aa sakta hai, anything. If the UI has not handled all possibility of responses which will come by a server, the UI is going to then crash. It will become a blank page. So be careful when these contracts are being discussed. Every possible response which the server can give, they have to be handled in the UI. So define the contract like that. Generally, people rely on the HTTP code for interpretation. 200, 202 is for success. Other than that, the 400s, 500s, everything is a failure, and error code handling will also be happening there. Okay, be clear with all that. It's required to have that in the sense of understanding. Okay, it's very important. Fine. Now, once that contract is done, the development is happening. Server guy coded locally, he's testing locally. The UI member is actually going and testing in his local code using mocks. Now, it says now they want to integrate with one another. Remove the mock and actually make the system functional. That's the next step, which is called as dev integration. Again, a terminology. People might use it by different names. Dev integration. Okay, here the code of UI as well as server will be deployed in the dev environment. So nothing but guys, you're coding in your local, but imagine multiply this feature with 10 people working together. For that sprint, maybe 10 features are being discussed, right? So all these 10 feature code will be merged together somewhere, right? So while the development is happening, once your code is ready, I'm not getting into the branching detail. That's a complete new chapter. Feature branch mein code karna hai. You are not allowed to merge it to the integration branch till the time it is stable and sanity done. There is a lot of things there. Okay, but for now, let's keep it simple. There is a branch. In this bit bucket, you can create a branch. In this branch, you are doing the coding. Once this coding is done, you commit only the Java code there, not the build libraries. Only the Java code is committed. This code is going to be then deployed onto the dev environment. Dev environment is nothing but something like AWS environment or Google Cloud Platform or Azure or any local and local machines, whatever. So whatever your team is using, some infrastructure will be there where your code will be deployed. Generally, these machines are Ubuntu machines. Okay. Majority, I have seen Ubuntu. एक दो बार कभी I have seen Windows some systems. Okay, but majority it's Ubuntu, Red Hat, those services. Okay. Now, once it is deployed, okay, then the UI guy is also deploying his code, server deploys his code. You guys will be able to do the testing. If there are bugs, they fix it. Once they fix everything, so nothing but while the testing is happening, some people parallelly do the code review. Okay, parallelly. So code review with your tech lead. So while the testing is happening, maybe at the same time, you're parallelly doing the code review. So if there are any review feedbacks, you can include the changes and deploy that and test it. So guys, one important thing, smart way of working is avoiding any rework. Okay. So if you like, just think upfront. In IT, smart way work is double work nahi hona chahiye, rework should not happen. So be upfront. That is where design and approach earlier itself confirm ki we are going to do it like this. Now, while you are doing development, okay, and while you are doing the dev integration testing itself, encourage the code review to happen, because after that, if the lead does a code review, you would have to test the entire thing again. So parallelize these two activities. It will save a lot of your time. Okay, and push your seniors to do some code review at a high level. It's required. Otherwise, directly code will go to production, and if it bombs, it risks everything. Okay, so code review will be done in here, and okay. Fine, all of that will be happening. Once the lead is satisfied that the code is good, once the developers are satisfied that it is all working fine, then the code will be merged to integration branch. Again, it's a terminology. Okay, in Microsoft, they call it as a development branch. In our projects, we are calling it as integration branch. Some other company might have something else, but nothing but there is a branch where entire feature. So we said for that sprint, let's say 10 features are there. So initially, all the 10 feature development were happening in 10 different feature branches. We are getting into branching model of here. So developers were coding in their own feature branches, but once they say we are ready for giving to the QA, they have to merge their code in a single. Why? Because in the production, only one branch can be deployed, not 10 branches. So developers code independently, but once they are feeling ready for going to production, they will be merging their code to the integration branch. And from this integration branch, code will be deployed onto the QA environment. So the way dev environment was there, so in AWS or these infrastructure, they will create multiple partitions. For example, some projects will have dev environment, QA environment, UAT environment, or stage environment, and then the production environment. UAT stage is also called as a pre-prod environment at times. So it completely depends. There could be multiple environments also. It depends from project to project. So you need to understand how your project life cycle is. But yeah, so this is one of the way of doing it, which is really working since quite some time in the IT industry. So just relate with it, people. The code will be merged from the feature branch to the integration branch. Here also code review happens. So generally there is a terminology like via pull request. Okay, so that will be going on, and then it comes down. So once the code is gone, just yahan pe I'll even say sometimes, okay, there are tools and DevOps activity will be happening in parallel. Okay, for example, there is a CI/CD work happening here, okay, where triggered by maybe DevOps. So they are going to use some tools called as Jenkins, okay, Ansible, okay, cloud formation templates. Okay, they have a very strong knowledge on infra. In that there will be all that VPCs, networking, communications. They need to have some strong knowledge in Nginx kind of configurations, OS level details, all of these things basically. So DevOps is going to have some setup with them, and using which it becomes easy because now the projects are growing, so many services there, manually deployments are not possible. So they simply go ahead, click on some buttons here and there, and then simply they take up this code from the integration branch. A build cycle will be executed, check out the code, build the code using Maven, Gradle, whatever tools, archive the code, and then prepare the WAR file, jar file, executable file, and then deploy it onto the machine. So everything is automated there, not of manual things are not there. Just click on buttons, or even that happens like on commit auto deployments also happening for some companies. Okay, just know it. There is a process, the CI/CD pipeline, which will be very effective for many companies and projects. Now, the next thing is team. Once the code goes to the QA, again, the same piece of work happens. The QA is going to do the testing in their environment. Okay, let's not too much focus here about the testing related part. Okay, there are ways of writing QA test cases. So if you are any QA is there in the house, I would sincerely say understand how the QA test case templates are. Whether you are a manual tester or an automation tester, you basically need to know how to test. What are the corner cases? Those knowledge is the foundation for becoming any manual or automation. So test cases, how to write, how to analyze requirements, how to ask questions. That's the foundation of any QA. Accordingly, they should be able to write test cases, cover corner cases, make sure that the test cases are covering all the use cases which are mentioned in the acceptance criteria of user story. So in the user story, whatever requirements are mentioned, everything should be covered in test cases, and the tester is supposed to test that. Cross verification will happen, and they do all that, and then the QA testing will go. If there are bugs, they again go back to the Jira. In the Jira, they can create a bug, assign it to the developer. Developer sees it, fixes it, comes back here. ठीक है. Now how does he fix? Let's थोड़ा सा एक वो cycle देख लेते हैं. And how to debug, let's even think about that, because many people in IT is not able to debug things properly. Okay, देखो, there are multiple ways. I'll just give you a one logical way of doing debugging. Okay, first of all, understand the bug which is coming from the QA side. Okay, without assumption, don't directly jump into it. And one important measure, if you don't know what's the fix, don't change anything in code. The root cause has to be found before you try to fix it. It's not a guesswork. Ye hua hoga, this might have happened, so let's try like this. Don't do that. Okay, you have to find the root cause. Oh, this happened, that's where it is working like this. So get to that point where you can get this much of confidence first. How do you get it? Okay, fine, try to reproduce it. There will be logs generated behind the screen. So first of all, ask the QA what exactly he did. There will be in the bug, all the descriptions will be there. You try to first reproduce it. Okay, reproduces nothing but you test it on the dev environment and see, do the same steps which the tester did and see whether the behavior is working like that. If it is a genuine problem, okay, then go back to the logs. So log4j, slf4j, these kind of all tools will be there in the backend environment or whatever technology you're using. You will have all these logging tools. So you need to just scan all the logging tools, tail it, okay, grep it, and then try to perform the use case and see what logs are coming there. Okay, now based upon whatever logs are coming, you try to relate these logs with your code. Okay, this line number is printed, this is printed, oh, here the value was like this, here the value. Code versus log matching should happen so that you can identify where exactly the code is failing. And looking at the logs, if there are any exceptions, you will even be able to see, oh, yahan pe something went wrong, that's where there is an exception in the log. You take those exceptions, go to Google, paste it, why this exception is coming, look it in the code, which line number has thrown that exception, and try to do this full analysis. It is step-by-step analysis. Magic will not happen. You have to do it. Okay, you have to analyze that. So go to the logs, match it with the code, look at the exception, check the line number, go to Google, figure out kya ho raha hai, change then the code if you're pointing it. Okay, sometimes if you have not written right log statements, so then as part of your reproducing activity, write some log statements, again build it, deploy it on the dev environment, and then test it back again. That's another way of doing it. Okay, there is also something called as Eclipse based remote debugging. So thoda sa explore that also. That's the Brahmastra solution. Whenever logs cannot answer something, Eclipse based remote debugging, I have always used that, and guaranteed I will be able to find everything. Why? Because it puts a hook in your JVM itself. You will be able to see all the objects ka everything. Okay, and then that the problem solving becomes really easy. But you have to be careful when you are doing that remote debugging with Eclipse. Okay, so just understand. So yeah, basic itna hi hota hai. If there is an exception, rather than chasing kya hua, take the exception, go to Google, look it in the exception, there will be a stack trace. So and so line number triggered the exception. Then go to the code and try to suspect, oh, what went wrong here? What exactly is not working? Okay, is the value coming from the database is not as expected? Thoda, that's what root cause finding is required. Okay, once you do all this work, you will find the root cause. Then you do the code change. Then you again deploy it on the dev environment, reproduce it, and if it is fixed, get the code reviewed, merge it back to the integration branch, and give the code back for the QA for testing. This cycle will keep happening till the time the QA does a sign off. QA will say, I'm happy. And this sign off is going to be again tracked in Jira. They will be putting some comments. Okay, testing is closed. Now we are moving this user story into the next state, okay, ready for UAT cycle. Okay. Now, once it goes for ready for UAT, the further UAT process, again, DevOps kicks in, does the UAT deployment. Okay, and then for some time UAT testing will happen. If there are bugs, again the same cycle continues, and then after that prod deployment will happen. Okay, so this is how the work happens. You have to make sure. Okay, now let me stop the screen share. Okay, so thoda sa just be clear here. ठीक है. So guys, देखो, this is how general process happens. ठीक है. And the more you do it, the more you'll be getting grip of this. ठीक है. So as a beginner, when you claim some gap as experience, so it is important that you guys start knowing the system, who are the people, who are the coordinators, okay, and how it goes through. Okay, there are some questions which I am able to see it in chat. Okay, when it comes to val and var phases, okay, first of all, I am not aware of this terminology. Okay, what is val and var? Okay, maybe terminology I'm not clear. Process might be aware okay, what is val and var, but I don't know this terminology. So if you can elaborate it more, okay, what exactly this means. So if I know it, I can share some inputs, but I have not heard this terminology so far. Maybe it is something specific or I'm not sure. Okay, fine. Okay, okay. So if you have some questions, just put it there in the chat. We will be trying to address it. Okay. Meanwhile, guys, keep the basics right. My suggestion to all the working people, okay, as well as the juniors who are trying to get inside, if you're claiming gap as experience, knowing this entire process, being comfortable with the entire process, and using all the tools is required. Only technology clarifications and getting it to the industry, you will be more tensed while day-to-day conversations are happening. And if you're not able to catch up, that nervousness then starts growing up. So whatever we discussed today, go through this video multiple times. Something might have gone like a bouncer. I did not much cover about even database. There is a cycle in which database also gets handled. The database scripts have to be committed in the system and then executed. So there are a few things. Okay, in one session I just tried to cover one flow of working. Okay, and I think that should be a core base to get started with. But just know it, this is what is happening in the IT industry. Okay, now as you go forward, production tak jayega system, and there will be a production support team separate than the development team. So while the piece is going in production, the dev team is already doing the development. Okay, the dev team continues with the development, and if there are production bugs coming, if there are serious bugs, the dev team might have to jump there to even solve it, but it comes via process. Prod support team will try to first fix it. If they are not able to fix, then they will get in touch with the developers. If it is a hot fix bug required, they immediately have to code it and fix it. If it can be done in the next sprint, they will be taking care of that like that. Okay, so there is a process of production support process. Projects will have 24/7 support, sometimes only working hour support. So it completely depends how it is happening in your project and in your company. Okay, so that is another thing there. Fine team, this is what. Now there are a few more phases. Let me just throw it. We said about logs, right? Going to machine, checking the logs. Right now in the industry, and since long time, it's not like recent. Okay, since long time, many of the projects have gone to the level of using Kibana. Okay, so Kibana it is a log management kind of a tool. So since there are microservices and so many like 50s and hundreds of services spread, it's not possible to go to every service and see. So if you log into Kibana tool, it is a log churning tool. It will be collecting all that data and showing it. Okay, that is how Kibana systems will be used. Easy for catching something across maybe even 100 services. So one request came, that request might have traveled to so many services. It's not possible to go to every machine and check all the things. Okay, and that's what verification and validation. That's what it's the UAT phase itself, Shekhar. Okay, so that verification validation process. So that's the UAT phase. That's nothing but once you have deployed on the stage environment, so people are going to do the verification and all. And if they say no, we are not happy, then the prod launch will be halted there as well. Okay, fine. So going back to Kibana, so this kind of tool will be there in system Kibana and Docker related. Okay, let's even put some highlight. There is a lot of commonality happening in the industry right now. Docker, Kubernetes, and Amazon ECS. Okay, just be aware of these things. Docker, Kubernetes, Amazon ECS. What is required? I'm just throwing thoughts, information at you now. Okay, so try to just capture it. It's just random. Okay, Docker, Kubernetes, and ECS kind of tools. Why is it required? What is it used for? when in the production system, load increases. Okay, so there is a functionality. Right now, you might be able to serve 200 requests per second. Let's say that is the capability of a machine. Okay, now when the load grows, more customers starts using it, the server is going to crash. Okay, the server is going to crash. Now, if the server is crashing, it's business loss. So that's where people say we need scalable systems. Okay, it should automatically grow when the load grows. Okay, so it is called as auto scaling. So when the more customers are coming, the capacity of the node should also grow. That is called as auto scaling. It should happen automatically even without any manual intervention. How do you do it? Is one easy way is using Docker and Kubernetes system. Okay, so Docker is like you host your entire service which you are building on the backend side in some containers. Container is a small VM virtual. It's a OS basically. It's just a machine. Whatever your laptop is there, a minimal software required for executing the service. It's a snapshot. Docker is a container. It's a virtual machine. That's it. It's just a VM. Okay, which can host the service and it can execute completely independently. Okay. Now what happens is whenever more load comes in the system, a new node will automatically be purchased by AWS based upon the configuration, and behind the load balancer, the traffic is going to be routed to a different node. And that's possible if there is a Kubernetes, a cluster where these instances or containers are done. Okay, so that it is called as a Kubernetes cluster when it which grows and shrinks automatically. Okay, so Docker containers will be attached with this Kubernetes and it will be pretty nice for scaling purpose. Amazon AWS ECS has really simplified all these things. They don't need Docker containers. They have a different way of doing it. They say, okay, host your service. Okay, I'm not much aware of those clear things, but I guess serverless services are being developed, and these services will be directly plugged in into AWS ECS, which will be automatically growing, and when the traffic is less, automatically shrinking as well. Okay, so that's how AWS ECS is one of a way of doing it. Okay, so by that way, load handling will happen automatically, auto scale up and auto scale down. By that way, high available systems will be built, a real-time system which is never crashing. Right now, Facebook's, YouTube's and all, these systems never crash. Ek bar gaya tha thoda din pehle, but ideally these systems never crash. So they have to build it like highly available systems without downtime. The terminology is called as a zero downtime systems. Zero downtime systems. Okay, where it will never be going down. So it happens, right? That is where there is a terminology, blue-green deployment. So there are multiple availabilities. बहुत कुछ है, ठीक है, बात करेंगे तो चलते जाएगी. Things will keep going on and on. Blue-green deployments के, that's one way of achieving high availability. ठीक है, route the customer traffic to some set of instance, do the deployment in other set of instance, do the testing. If it is all working, route this traffic, live functional traffic to this system, and then the deployments here. So it's like blue-green. System is running, plus you are doing deployments in another place, you're testing it there. Once it is good, you route the traffic here, and then you deploy here, and then load balance across both the systems. Okay, that's one way of blue-green deployments happening, which is again going to make it a high available system. Okay, fine. Another catch, disaster recovery. Again, important for projects. Okay, major projects, like data is everything, right? Data is everything which cannot be lost at any cost. So the backups of the machines has to be there, whether it's your MySQL, Oracle, or RDS or Aurora. In AWS services also, they provide their own databases. So wherever you have databases, you need to have backups. Okay, in projects, every morning, every day, snapshots of the database will be taken. Okay, and they maintain these snapshots in real live environment, so that even if something goes wrong, we can retrieve the data from here and restore it back. Okay, and then AWS RDS, these guys are guaranteeing okay, till last 5 minutes of data will always be available across the globe. So these services are guaranteeing that. That's where using these kind of paid services will be more good for your applications. You don't have to do a lot of all this maintenance work for yourself, backing up and all. They take care of it by default. You just have to enable some configuration and it just works like charm. Okay, Recently, guys, you might have heard about it if you are in the industry, or like vulnerabilities were found. Log4j ke andar somebody injected a code. In UI side library, some attacker injected the code, and every project was almost using it. So it went to across the globe. All the projects downloaded this vulnerability. Okay. Now, guys, with this vulnerability, there was some risk to the system. Okay. Now the thing was, in AWS, there is something called as entry level gateway. Okay, where some predefined rules are there. I'm not able to remember the terminology, what exactly that entry level gateway is called. But there were some WAF rules. Yes, web application firewall rules. So on the AWS side, there were WAF rules, paid service, but wonderful. So AWS guys immediately provided and rolled the first level fix for that in the form of WAF rules. Application changes were required, but they tried to really eliminate a lot of risk in the system. Okay, and if those things, and even like sometimes DDoS attack happens in the system, denial of service attack, like intentionally in production, some customers will try to bombard your system with lot of traffic, and then the system will be down for like 3 hours, 4 hours, and then they drop an email, okay, we have brought your system down, and if you want to bring it back up, give us so many bitcoins of data. Okay, and that's a real problem, right? So usko fix karne ke liye, again, I think these all DNS providers, Cloudflare, AWS, CDNs, so these guys provide their own way of blocking these kind of DDoS attacks. So that's where I would say, if your projects can afford, try to use the stable, proven, paid services which are provided by reliable provider. Okay, and if it is not having, then you will have to code it manually by yourself, and it will have a pain itself. Okay. Okay. Jaishant is asking, okay, why do we need to migrate from Coronet PCF to PNF PCF? Okay, I'm completely not aware of this. Okay, it might be a complete different domain or something. Not aware of this. Okay. Yeah. Apigee gateway, I'm aware. In our project also, we were using Apigee. So it's a Google product. Now what happens? Let's think about this thing. Okay. So when you build backend systems, now it's just knowledge sharing. Okay, guys, it's just knowledge sharing. When you build backend systems, so there will be a lot of customers which will be trying to access your system. Okay. So you have developed a backend system. There are so many APIs. Sometimes business happens in the form of APIs. You don't know, but let's say right now behind the screen, the HDFC Bank has opened you a UI interface, but a lot of HDFC Bank APIs will be open for a lot of other people, right? Let's say UPI APIs are available. Like, how is your PhonePe app able to talk with your balances of HDFC and all? Nothing, but they are all connecting with APIs behind the screen. Nothing but the backend system which you have developed will expose APIs to the outer world. Now, guys, every API has to be a secured API. It cannot be non-secure, right? It has to be a secured API. Now, there are n number of ways of adding this kind of security in the system. Okay, in the form of like OAuth tokens will be there, or just simple JWT tokens will be there, and multiple other standard-wise security will be there. Primary aim is, why should the functional team keep rebuilding all of that? Because it is something so common and basic. What they do is they inject these kind of gateways in between, called as Apigee or Sensidia, or some other providers could also be there. They just take the paid service from these guys. There they just configure, okay, the external world will call this. From this, it will do the basic security checks and all that, and then it will call the internal system. So as a functional developer, you focus on only functional development of the system. You don't really get into this all ready-made logics, basically. Plus all those security rules and all will be built in there. It is a trustable product. And a lot of times what happens is, for licensing, it is easy, because if you're trying for a very like high level secured applications to go into certain country and run your application, they will say, hey, do you have these certifications, those certifications? Because we need to have a certain standard if we want to use your APIs. So all of this, they can say, hey, we are using a Google product, Apigee. They have all the certifications with them. License is okay. Give us that. Okay, PSD2 standards will be there. There is a global standards by which APIs will be exposed. Okay, so recently, like PSD2 is one of the, so nothing but API writing standards are also there in real world. So it becomes very easy when you have some providers like this. Okay, fine. This is what is happening in the IT industry. Synchronous communication, asynchronous communication, auto scaling, okay, database backups, okay, load testing, DB if it slows down, partitioning the data, indexing the data, okay, having some stream of data where we take data from one system, process it, find out duplicates, and then maybe conversion of data, data transformation, okay, and then give it to another system. These kind of use cases will be there. Okay, automatically jobs will be running in the morning or in the evening at fixed times, and they will be doing some job. That kind of process will be there. Okay, so all of those things are available. Okay, fine. Now let's close this session. We have been speaking for like 10 minutes and 15. It's 10:15. I'll share the attendance link, okay, in our YouTube chat itself today with the code of attendance. Okay, a second. We did not get much details to discuss about how we are going to go on Monday. So since it is not too much discussed, I would again on Monday we will go live like this itself on YouTube. So I'll not block anybody right now because we are already short of time now. There is no time to really discuss about all those details, how to get enrolled and continue forward. So let's keep it simple. Monday ko we will again come live on YouTube, and you guys uske baad we will just doing like whoever has completed days and all that, then we will take it forward. So but for now everyone, okay, attendance code for today, let's make it 998877, and this is the registration link. Okay, so just do it. Monday again we will be going live on Monday abhi seedhe. Okay, so weekend is completely off. Today's recording is available. Go through the session again. Open up your mind to what exactly IT industry is. Okay? Fine, fine, fine. Oh, okay. So all the very best, guys. It's a lot of things happening in the industry. It gets complicated at times. There are challenges coming at times, and we have to keep solving it. We have to keep growing into it. Okay. So just put the entry. Okay, team. So, chalo, thank you and have a nice weekend. Enjoy, grow more, learn more, enjoy over weekend, plus have the growth also balanced. Okay. Chalo, thank you all. Take care of yourself. Have a nice day, everyone.